this is kind of on my mind because the youth camp coming up. We also, it can be and should be in many ways applied to all of our lives and day in and day out, and no matter what we have going on at the church, and not just what goes on at the church, but what goes on in our 2 weeks, I believe it's exactly 2 weeks from today, we will have a multitude of children and people here. And I know a lot of people get involved with the youth camp. Not everybody does. But just thinking along those lines, since that's going to be coming up, that's what's got me going this direction. But what we need before the multitude comes, what we need before we do these things, and it is the same thing that we need from day to day, and that is Jesus. And we say that so often, and it's so repetitive. We need Jesus, we need Jesus. We almost get numb to the truth of the matter. But we truly do need Jesus in everything that we are involved in, and especially as the church, and especially as something as big as the youth camp is becoming and has become, and everything that turns and everybody that's involved, and so many turning wheels, so many decisions, so many parts and pieces moving all at once. We definitely need Jesus during the youth camp. And then also in our lives, like I say, we can apply it and should apply it to our lives as well. But first, we need Jesus to draw the multitude. We need Jesus to draw the multitude. Jesus is the one who brings people in. He is the one that draws somebody's heart to himself. In verse 33, it said, "And the people saw them and departing, and many knew him," Jesus, "and ran afoot thither out of all cities, and outwent them, and came together unto him." These people were not running to the disciples. They were not running to Matthew and Luke and John and Mark and all those guys. No, they were running to Jesus. And it says they came to Jesus. And Jesus is what draws the multitude. We can invite people, and we should invite people. We can advertise, and that's a good thing. But only the Holy Spirit can do an eternal work in the hearts of people around us. We can invite them, we can teach them, we can preach to them, but only Jesus can do that eternal work in their life. Jesus deserves the spotlight, and that should be the force behind everything that we do, is to point to Jesus. Many times, this world is a me world. And it's a selfish world. Look what I can do. Look what I can gain. What do you think they call it? I don't have my phone up here. But what do you think? Why they call it selfies? It's because everybody is so self-obsessed with what I have accomplished. And look what I have. And I can do this and I can do that. And if we're not careful, that can creep into our lives, even into the church. And we get to start saying, look what Gum Springs has done. And look what I have done. And look what I'm over. And look what I have accomplished. And if we're not careful, that's very common in a lot of churches. And we need to be careful with that, because the spotlight should not be on us, and not even on Gum Springs necessarily, but it should be pointing people to Jesus. And that spotlight should be on Jesus, just like these lights right here. You can't even look up in the balcony because the spotlight's right in my face. They shouldn't be on me. They should be pointing up to Jesus. Anyway, that was funny. Our goal is not to impress other people with what we do. It's not to impress those around us. We should do everything that we do and do it well for the Lord, but it's not to impress everybody else around us. Everything that we do should be to glorify Him and impress Him. That's a terrible way of saying it, but instead of others, it should be Him. And to introduce Jesus to others and others to Him. And then Jesus determines the increase. Excuse me. Jesus determines the increase. What do you mean by that, Brother Zach? Well, in 1 Corinthians, Paul said, I have planted, Apollos has watered, but God gave the increase. What are we doing when we have these meetings, when we have VBS, when we have youth camp, when we have revival? What are we doing when we have all these activities? We're bringing people in. We are planting seeds. We are watering, but only God can bring the increase. Only God can save a soul. It doesn't matter how much we do. It doesn't matter how great it is. It doesn't matter how extravagant things are. Only God can bring the increase. And so we should not get discouraged if sometimes things don't turn out the way we think they should. If numbers are not like they should be. If this or whatever it may be, it's all up to God. It's all in God's hands. We just do what we know what we're supposed to do and do it in a way of serving Him, and He will give us what we need and give them what they need as well. He's responsible for the results. And then we need Jesus in these times of serving. We need Jesus not only to bring the multitude, but we need Him to shape our attitude. Shape our attitude. You say, well, what does that mean? You're saying we got bad attitudes? I'm not saying y'all got bad attitudes. I know how I am sometimes. When things get stressful, when it's hot, and if we're not careful, our attitude needs to be adjusted. For illustration, I'll use myself, pick on myself. Caitlin already knows what I'm going to say. She called me today and just checking in. Hey, how's your day going? Hey, it's going all right, I guess. What's wrong? I said, well, I'm just feeling the weight of everything today. Just got a lot going on. Don't really want to be talking. And she said, well, what happened to that song that you put on the young adults group yesterday about thanking God for all His goodness and everything? She called me out. And I said, you're really calling me out right now? I said, I just don't feel like listening to any songs today. I got a bad attitude. And we get that way sometimes. And even serving, and even in the church, and trying to serve others, and trying to serve the Lord, and trying to be a blessing, sometimes if we're not careful, that bad attitude will creep into our spirit. And before you know it, we're saying the things we shouldn't say. We got the wrong spirit when we're talking to one another. And before you know it, he's mad at him, and she's mad at her, and everything's going on. And we need the Lord to shape our attitude coming up to youth camp, since it's the next thing coming up. And you can apply it to whatever else comes up after that, and daily. But we need the Lord, and we need to stop, and even when we come up here to pray, say, Lord, get me in the right mindset. Lord, get me in the right attitude. And that should be our prayer every day. I don't guess I prayed that in my morning prayer this morning for a good attitude, and it showed. But that should be our prayer every day, but especially when we got these things going on as a church body and a church family, and make sure we got the right attitude. Because if Zach ain't got the right attitude, and then I get around Caitlin, and it ain't going to take long for her to get a bad attitude too, if I don't change my attitude, and it spreads. Anyway, I'm not trying to talk to everybody like children, but it is a very real thing, and it happens. And it happens a lot. Mark chapter 6, 34 through 36, here in our text. It says, and Jesus, when He came out, saw much people, and was moved with compassion toward them, because they were as sheep, not having a shepherd. And when the day was now far spent, His disciples came unto Him and said, this is a desert place, and now the time is far past. Send them away. Say, it's getting late, time to get them. Send them home, Lord. We're tired. We are whooped. That's what we're all going to be saying come Friday night, Saturday morning. We're tired, we're whooped. Come on, give us Sunday off, please. And they said, send them away. But Jesus saw the same crowd that the disciples saw. But Jesus saw them differently, did He not? It says He looked upon them with compassion. The disciples were seeing these people, and they were looking at all the problems. They're saying, this is a big problem. We got a bunch of people here. We ain't got no food. This is fixing to be a real big problem, Lord. Time to send them away. And they were looking at all the problems. But what Jesus was looking at, He was looking at all the potential. And we need to start looking at people with the eyes that Jesus sees people. Start seeing people with the eyes that Jesus sees them. And let that be our prayer. Lord, allow me to see these children and these kids and others around me through your eyes. Lord, may I see the potential that you have for their lives and not just see the problems. We're going to have all kinds of shapes and sizes coming through these doors. All kind of little attitudes, all kind of sass, all kind of problems, kids coming from all kinds of different backgrounds. And if we're not careful, we'll sit there and judge them and say they shouldn't be that way. Look at all their problems. Look at all that. But you don't know. But Jesus is looking down and saying, look at the potential that they have. If I can just, if they would just give their life to me and I could save them, look at all the potential that I have in store for them. The same is with us. If we would just give ourselves to the Lord is saying, look at all the potential I have for you if you would just give your life to me. And so we need to be careful with looking at the multitude and how we see them. And then lastly, we need Jesus to direct our service. And I'm not talking about the service that we're having right here. Yes, we need that as well. But as we serve, we need Jesus to be the one directing us as we serve. Here we see Jesus directed every step. In verse 37, it says, He answered and said unto them, Give ye them to eat. 39, and He commanded them to make all sit down by companies upon the green grass. And Jesus gave the orders, and the disciples carried them out. And it should be the same as us. We ought to serve where He places us. Serve where He places us. He's not going to place everybody in the same position. He's not going to place everybody doing the same thing. Not everybody's going to be seen. Not everybody's going to get the pat on the back. But it does take everybody to get it done. And can I remind us that we are not serving and doing these things so others can see how good we are at it. We should be serving and doing these things so that we're trying to please the Lord. Serve where He places. And be careful comparing what we do to what other people do, because everybody has different gifts. Preaching to the choir, I realize, but God gave everybody different gifts, and He's got different places for each of us to serve in different roles. And then not only serve where He places, but serve until He finishes. And I will be reminding the few men that are going to be here a part of youth camp on Friday night, when Saturday morning comes around, to load all them beds back up. I'm going to remind you, hey, serve until it's finished, all right? Don't leave. Throwing that out there. But serve until He finishes. The disciples, they stayed faithful through it all. And they didn't quit halfway through the work. And then at the end, they got their own basket full, 12 baskets full. And they got their blessings. So when we're serving, don't quit halfway through. Go all the way to the end. Be like Paul. He says, I fought a good fight. Kept the faith, I finished my course. And so as we prepare for the next big thing, which is youth camp, let's remember that we do need Jesus for every aspect of it. It's nothing that we can do in ourselves. We need Him to bring them in. We need Him to help us with our attitudes. And we need Him to direct us how we serve and where we serve. All right, we'll come to the altar and have a time of prayer.